We're going to return now to the government's plans to try to tackle knife crime. And while events in Birmingham and Southport and South London may be extreme examples, tragedies like these are sadly all too common, as I'm sure many of you already know. Joining me to talk about this is anti-knife crime campaigner Faron Paul, who has survived 2 knife attacks, Faron, and you're also raising awareness, I know, through an art exhibition called the Artisan Collective, and that's a piece of the work behind us. We'll talk about that in a minute, Faron, but I'd like to start by asking about what happened to you, because you were stabbed several times across 2 different occasions.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's correct, yeah. It weren't gang-related, it weren't retaliation or nothing, it was just simply me defending people in my family. And unfortunately, I was stabbed 9 times on each separate occasion. One happened in Tottenham, Broadwater Farm, and the other one happened in Oxford Circus.
One of the busiest shopping streets in Europe.
And it happened at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening.
So in daylight, effectively.
Yeah, literally.
It was just beggars belief that people can be so brazen in causing this kind of harm, bringing this kind of violence to streets where... I mean, do you remember what happened that day? And other people must have been wondering what on earth is going on.
Exactly that, you know. After I did actually get stabbed, I tried to go into one of the surrounding shops to get in there, and the person literally locked the door. But I do understand it was through probably fear and shock, you know. He saw a lot of things going on, and it's not every day that someone sees someone using a knife on someone and somebody bleeding heavily, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's interesting that you have to qualify it by saying this wasn't gang crime, because people often make that assumption.
Yeah.
But we've seen in the past day, we saw last summer in Southport, we've seen in Germany today, as well as it happens, that there are different reasons, but knives seem to be the running theme. Because why?
Yes, there are so many contributing factors to knife crime. It goes beyond gang-related things, you know. I believe that, you know, currently in the UK, it's become nearly something that's engraved into society, into the younger people. And I don't believe that there's enough, how can I say, constraints and control from the social media platforms and key workers and, you know, probably say local authorities, but collectively, from community through to grassroots organisations, right the way through to government, if we can get together and put in realistic, feasible solutions, I think that's going to be the best course of action.
A lot of people feel they're sort of distant from this happening on the streets. You've been as close to it as anybody would not want to be, of course. You often hear that kids are carrying knives for protection, not to actually use them, but just by having them means they're more likely to be used.
And it's become a fashion, I'd say.
Still now? Still, despite everything that's been talked about over the recent years, they're still being glorified?
Well, it's been glorified and it's kind of engraved into revenge and retribution, you know. When somebody's been hurt and somebody's been physically maimed, they have friends and they have family that will want to seek revenge, you know. People have emotions and it's not easy. Like, I'm a person who has scars and injuries from knife crime, you know, and no matter, even though it's happened a long time ago, there are times where you sit down and you look at your scars, or there are pains that resonate with your injuries. So these are things that people need to understand. There's so many contributing factors, from mental health to emotional to physical trauma, that we've got a vicious circle of knife crime. And, you know, when these young people have the accessibility to these weapons easily, you'd see that these people are getting, gradually, the weapons are getting bigger and bigger.
Yes.
And it's almost a thing like, if his knife is that size, if I get a longer knife, that actually creates a bigger space for me. And hopefully, if I bring it out and it's big enough, that's going to be a deterrent from someone.
But we've heard about all these amnesties for things like zombie knives and bans for them, and now the government is talking about 2-stage identification to make it harder online. But at the same time, knives are important tools that people have in their kitchen drawers. How do you think that's going to work, what the government's doing?
I feel like, you know, we have to explore different avenues, and I do feel like there are things we can put in place to maybe protect people that will need weapons for feasible causes, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, if you do have a trade that requires a certain weapon or a certain instrument, then maybe you should produce credentials to prove your trade, you know? And we should get more stronger on the licensing, you know? I think things like this putting in place will prevent people who ain't supposed to get weapons offline from getting them, and not affect the people that do actually need these tools.
But everyone has them in their house. You know, the people be chopping up vegetables for dinner right now using a kitchen knife.
And that's a fair point. And I'd like to say to you, them same people have medicine cabinets that's out of reach of children, OK? But I'd say to you at the same time, more knives kill young people than medicine cabinets do. So maybe it's a chance for everyone's household and parents to maybe pay more attention on containing their weapons away from, if they do have children that's out on the streets, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, if we can have enough attention to pay to medicine cabinets, let's start to put that same energy into kitchen utensils.
That's a really good point. Faron, let's just finish off on artism, because you're trying to turn this into something a bit positive to raise awareness. And I know you're not alone in that, but just tell us about this picture behind us, because this is something this is a sword that was actually given up in an amnesty, I think.
Yeah, that's correct. So a young man, he wanted to go through the positive transition, and in 2022, he handed that weapon in. And I've got a friend called Martin Jegede, and I've always known he's a talented artist. And I said to myself, you know, I'd always get these weapons and I'd hand them into the police, and that would kind of be the end factor. Although it's a good job done, I want to see longevity in a positive transition. And I thought to myself, me and Martin really sat down and thought about how we'd go about making a piece. And after a little while, we thought about the heartbeat line. So this is one of Martin's pieces called the Impulse piece, and and we call it a heartbeat blade. And I just want to say thank you to Artism and Denise, because they're putting together some, like it's an event that's going to be down in Charing Cross.
OK.
And it should be frequently used, where young people can come down and explore the world of art and listen to music. I'm really trying to have something that brings different walks of life together. And we believe art is something that everyone can express their emotions through.
It's great to hear it, and I really appreciate you coming in to talk about what happened to you and your point of view on this.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Faron.
R.I.P. Rob, bless you.